This is what they call hot box, right?
Well, we technically, with the high ceilings and the open doors, yeah, but it's a hot box.
First time I saw that was, everybody see that movie, Fast Times at Ridgemont High?
Oh, yeah.
Classic for us old dudes.
The band.
What the spaghetti are you talking about?
Well, now, I don't think there's a dispenser that I haven't seen a special event where they don't have the wind blowing, like they actually create the hot box purposefully.
All right, you can go ahead and do the countdown whenever you're ready.
Right. All right, so I'm going to do a countdown. I'm going to start from 10. When I hit 5, I'm going to go quiet, and I'm going to do the little preamble introduction we discussed. And so here we go. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. Hey everyone, and welcome to the April 2022 edition of High LBC, a co-production of the Long Beach Collective Association and Cannabis Capitol. It's a night focused on industry best practices and dialogue amongst professionals. And tonight we have a special panel and a discussion here. And so I want to say welcome to our guests, and if everyone could give us a round of applause here for their attendance tonight. And what I'm going to plan to do is I'm going to tell you that the topic tonight is the ugly cost of a cannabis license. And there's a lot of driving issues in the industry right now that need to be front and center for professionals who are developing careers, businesses, and an industry in a constantly shifting and evolving policy environment, as well as now that we have some years underneath our belt. So I'm going to start to my far left, and I'm going to ask this gentleman to introduce himself, tell you a little bit about his company. We're going to do that with each panelist, and then we're going to get into some questions about the topic of the night.
All right. Thanks for having me. I am Nate Bowles. I'm the founder of the Good Smoke Company based out of Long Beach, California. We are a 100% independently Black-owned and equity-owned indoor flower brand. Our whole motto is good weed and good deeds. We believe in the power of high-quality cannabis to bring people together, but also use that union and that vibe to help uplift communities that most need it by putting a spotlight on organizations and nonprofits that are doing good work in the community to, uplift those most in need. So that's just a little bit about me, and yeah, I'll kick it back over.
Hey, I appreciate it, Nate, and welcome. Welcome to Cannabis Capitol and to High LBC.
Thank you, thank you.
And next.
Hi guys, I'm Natasha, the owner of Hey Bud. We're an indoor cultivation here in Long Beach. We've been operating for the last 4 years, and I want to say I'm the first cultivator to get up and running in Long Beach for adult use. And we have a flower brand that just focuses on high quality cannabis and small batches. So we're a small facility, and we just focus on like the small batch runs.
Awesome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
I'm Chris Egger. I am a proud LBCA member, as well as I am a personality here at Cannabis Capitol. I work with Infused Digital, which is the production company that produces Cannabis Capitol programming. And I also host a podcast called Pop Politics on a weekly basis, delving into political issues here in the state of California. So thank you.
Hey there, everybody. Hab Haddad. I am the owner and CEO of Greenpoint Holdings. We're a manufacturer and distributor here in Long Beach. Very proud to be licensed about 3-4 years ago. Didn't start operating until about 2 years ago, and that's part of this conversation today, and the difficulties of getting up and running and the expenses that go along with it. But the amazing thing is we are also the brand Highmighty. We make some of the most amazing topicals on planet Earth. So please give them a try. Yeah. And very happy to be here with you tonight. Thank you for the Cannabis Capitol and the LBCA for putting on such events. Very awesome.
Well, all right, so, and thank you, everyone. There's a live audience here of membership, too, and that's what Unity is about. It's going to help build a better version of our industry. The best practices and the peer-to-peer networking that's going on here tonight is a big part. So give yourself a round of applause. And with that being said, tonight's topic, the ugly cost of a cannabis license. You know, the first thing I think of is tax reform and the issues that we face as an industry with just the onerous and heavy-handed taxes that have been pushed upon us with all the other struggles that we meet. But, you know, I'm going to start here, and Natasha, I'm gonna let you go first. What was the first thing that came to your mind when someone said, would you speak to the topic, the ugly cost of a cannabis license? What should people in this audience be hearing about right now about what you've learned since, you know, getting into business?
Whatever you think you need, times that by 10. I teach Intro to Cultivation in the LBCC class, Intro to the Cannabis course, and we have a lot of social equity students this year, and a lot of them don't know the actual cost. They think that they can get the grants and the money and all that stuff, and that would be sufficed for them to start a business, and it's really not. So when I had a student, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, tell me, oh yeah, I can do it with this much, and I was like, no. And so that's how we decided that we should probably talk about this.
Right. Okay. So, and that's fair enough. What was the first thing that came to your mind when this topic was brought up for you?
That you can literally talk about this topic for hours on end, and we've already been complaining and arguing about these, you know, pain points to each other for years now. So I'll be, you know, bitching and moaning for 2 hours to people who've already heard me bitch and moan for hours and hours and hours.
Fair enough. Well, and Natasha and you are both educators as part of the LBCA's collaboration with Long Beach City College, right? Right. So the two of you are actually out there trying to educate people on this. So I think it's important. We'll get into some specifics. And Nate, what was the first thing that came to mind for you? I mean, you seem to be very positive, dude. You got great energy and a great brand story. But, you know, there's got to be some pain there too, right?
Oh, there's a whole lot of pain. Whole lot of pain. First off, in full disclosure, I was like, why the hell did you guys ask me to do this? Because honestly, I'm still going after my license. So I'm in the thick of it, and learning on the go, learning on the fly, and putting things together. And, you know, like Natasha was saying, you know, I think a lot of people come into this space and far underestimate what is actually required, the amount of capital, the infrastructure, the team that you actually need to pull it off, and really what you're going up against. So, I mean, there's so much to unpack, you know, within this space, and especially through the licensing process. I mean, I'm sure we could have this panel go on, you know, part 2, 3, 4, you know, so.
So that's a good question then, right? And you're getting some people here who obviously commiserate. So can I ask you then, what was something that you initially projected that it was going to be a cost, or you know, when we talk about the word ugly, what was something that you didn't see coming that ended up, you know, being 4 times the amount that you had projected, or a cost that you didn't see, Nate, or something that you're dealing with right now?
I mean, fundamentally, I think when you're talking about a license, you got to start with the real estate. The real estate portion of it is so essential, and you really got to have all your P's and Q's put together when you walk into that conversation and you're talking to real estate brokers, you're talking to landlords. Me being social equity, you kind of expect it when you walk into some of these conversations that you're not going to get a lot of focus or a lot of the attention that others might come into that space with. But a lot of people don't know, my background is in the financial industry. I'm Series 7 licensed, come from commercial real estate, did that for a while, but also came from the traditional market and have a hybrid experience of how to put things together. But I think equity applicants, you know, just any general licensee coming into the space, if you're unfamiliar with cannabis, is you really got to understand the cost of the real estate. You're gonna have to put up bread on a deposit on the property before you can even get that letter of authorization from a landlord. You're talking about $20,000-$25,000 out of pocket before you even sign a lease.
But you anticipated that cost. So for anyone out there, you would say, be very aware that the real estate's going to, and that, by the way, that's not even regulatory, right? That's not even the cost of taxes or licensing fees or you know, approvals and stuff. That's a straightforward private sector
Private
market-making
sector
decisions.
dealings, market rate.
What
Even
ends
in a
up
social
happening,
equity.
Chris, is it's all because of zoning. So depending on the city you're going into, do they even offer licenses? And if they do offer licenses, what zones within that city do they offer those license types? So if you want to be a retailer, do they allow retail stores in those particular zones you're looking for? So zoning is how cities limit license types when they have unlimited licenses. They limit it by restricting the zoning that you can get real estate. And when they restrict the zoning, well, all the landlords that own real estate in those zones that are cannabis enabled jack up the prices, and all of a sudden you have the cannabis tax on top of that. I mean that figuratively, in that they just jack the prices up. Yeah. So whether you want to buy the building or rent the building, you're not only competing with that landlord who knows they're licensed to rent to a cannabis license, but you're competing with all the other people that want to get in the space, and now their dollars are fighting against your dollars. So that's when it even gets more escalated, and the prices, it's a bidding war at that point. So that becomes unattainable, especially when you have to build your facility out, and it's going to take you years to get that done. Besides all the architectural, building, permitting costs, it just becomes hundreds of thousands of dollars, not tens of thousands of dollars.
And so I got to ask you then, so once, is the high cost of the real estate that it took to get you into a permittable space, is that something that as you've operated, that you've kind of recognized as being a painful cost, right? Like that you came into it competitively?
1,000%, and I'll be honest and say that a lot of times I can judge whether a company is going to make it based on the terms of their lease or lease-to-own agreements, depending on what dollar per square foot they pay for, right? That's how it's calculated in real estate. So if the dollar per square foot you paid for is too high, your overhead on a monthly basis is going to be extreme, and then the amount of revenue you make in from the cannabis sales you have are not going to basically cover your overhead, your burn rate, how much money your company spends on a monthly basis to basically break even. And for a lot of companies, the real estate is a good 30 to 40% of that.
Hey, Natasha, did you guys encounter, I mean, what was the threshold for your real estate? Are you in multiple locations, a singular location?
So I'm in one location right now. Our rent is high. Like, prices of cannabis went down, but my rent went up 3%. So it's bad.
So that's what we're going to get into then. So, all right, what is it, right now, we've had this discussion. You've done a lot of the math about the reduction of taxation and the increase post-tax reduction in terms of sales receipts and revenues for the city of Long Beach. But, what role did taxes become? You and I talked about the cost of goods, about the fixed tax at the point of cultivation. Is that a cost that no one kind of really paid attention to in early legalization?
In the beginning, there were no legal operators. We were quasi-legal. So when the cities and the states put these tax codes together, there were no legal operations to base their calculations on. So the cities and the state independently started just putting together their own tax codes. The cities have the ability to tax cannabis just like the state does. Well, we all know about the state. They tax cultivators and they tax at the retail point, the excise tax, right? On top of sales tax, right? And your local sales tax. But the cities, each city makes their own municipal code, municipal tax code, right? So they decide, let's tax the cultivators. But let's also tax the manufacturers, the distributors, the testing labs, and then the retail, let's also tax that. And they tax it aggressively. They usually make it on gross receipts, so you get no deductions. And then on top of the cities doing that, then you have the state taxing the cultivation and the retail. And then on top of that, once you have your net dollars, then you have to do your federal taxes just to tell the federal government what you thought you made, but they're gonna say, no, you can't write off any of that. You can only write off the cost of goods, which to retailers, that's horrible because they have so much overhead with labor and workers, the electricity, they can't write that off. So me as a manufacturer, I can write off quite a bit because I have to make my goods, so I have that write-off. Now, the city of Long Beach doesn't let me write it off. The federal government does, the state does, but the city of Long Beach does not recognize the cost of goods deduction.
So after a period of time, though, hopefully policy is going to evolve in these areas, right? But until we have banking, until we have normalized, relationships for anyone to, I take it, when they say, oh, well, we're going to treat you just like everyone else, but that's not possible, right? Because the cannabis industry is put under such duress from other areas, the lack of the true banking relationship, with a
They don't
standard
realize the amount of stress that each pain point puts on a cannabis company. So I have to actually pay for a legal bank account, right? So every month I pay $1,000 for a middleman to bank my money just for a bank to touch it because they're afraid of laundering money, okay? So there's all these pain points just to be operating like a normal business, which doesn't have those pain points. Oh, a normal business, get a bank account, doesn't cost them $1. In fact, the bank wants their money. In fact, the bank will say, hey, you need any money for your building? Need a construction loan? Do you need money for operating? What can we get you? Do you need to buy a car? Do that in the cannabis industry, you got to get a private money, you got to get your friends and family, and the interest rates, if somebody giving you, because they think you're a cannabis company, they think you're millionaires, so they're going to jack you. They're going to say, give me 14% interest on your $100,000 that you took. Good luck paying that off.
Hey, Nate, so, we talked a little bit earlier about Amber Center and Supernova Women and a conversation I had with her about Oakland. And, they had made some loans to social equity applicants, which at the time probably were, seen as, a good help. Has there been any specifics about this area that has benefited you as a social equity applicant? Or are you, like a lot of these folks in Oakland, going to be buried under these taxes as well when you come to market with.
So, like other cannabis companies and brands, I have to pay all levels of taxes. So that's local, through the city distribution tax, state, and federal. When you're talking about loans like the Oakland Social Equity Program did, Long Beach is a little bit different. They have grant funding. But the grant funding is a little tricky to tap into. And there's actually a lot of animosity surrounding the social equity program right now. As the city's still trying to define how they're really going to roll it out and develop best practices to, bring more social equity licenses into the market and how the market will absorb those businesses. I think I have touched on it a little bit, but didn't say what it was. 280E. 280E is a
Hey, you can use whatever language.
All right,
you
I've never been on stage like this, so I don't know what I can really say. 280 is a motherfucker. Like it'll eat your ass up if you're not looking out for it. You're not accounting for it. You're not forecasting it. You'll think you'll have net profit, significant at the end of the day. But then when you really look at it and you're not accounting for that, you're definitely gonna have a tax bill at the end of the year. Like you need to be prepared for that. But in regard to like Oakland again, I've heard, since those are loans, you got to pay back that loan. Mm-hmm. And that does not mean the program still rolled out efficiently for those equity applicants.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, it became an ugly cost for them.
Right.
Because here they are buried. One of the solutions they came up with in Oakland was under 1.5 million, you were paying no taxes as a social equity municipal license holder. Anytime you built a company that was doing gross proceeds over 1.5 million, I thought that was an interesting approach. But you're talking about in Long Beach that it's grant money. So what is a social equity status garnered for your brand and for your journey? Is there
if you want to be perfectly honest and frank, not much.
And that's a sad truth, huh?
That is a sad truth. I think you got to really approach this industry, if you're coming into it, as you are a general business like everyone else. You've got to compete on the same playing field and deal with the same barriers to entry that everyone else has. Now, over the last, whatever you want to call it, months, years, or whatever, with social equity, I mean, there have definitely been some more forces to come to the table to kind of, place more barriers in front of social equity applicants. And that's why you see things like in the city of LA with the lawsuits that happened where they had to put a pause on the licensing process while social equity applicants sued the city and, got another 100 or 200 licenses.
Yeah, there's a horrific story, so Donnie Anderson, who passed recently, God bless, he was unable to actually open in a storefront that he had been working on developing a license for. He actually passed Measure M. right? And he, as a co-chair of the California Minority Alliance, right? So I always found that, Natasha, I got to ask you, metric's a big part of the cultivation world. It starts right at that point of origin, seed to sale mindset. What cost has compliance been for you guys, and how has it gotten better over time? Has it gotten more manageable and cost efficient?
When we first started, I wasn't aware of a lot of the compliance stuff, such as like the DPR people in the agriculture department, all them measures, weights. So we had to hire someone to come in and, train my compliance guy and get him up to speed. And she was there for like a week, and that came with a hefty cost. She had to train our guys and teach them what they needed to know and how we had to have our binders and our everything, just from, what the DCC is going to look at, what the agricultural department's going to look at, just to be prepared. And that was a cost that we weren't, that wasn't built into our business plan because we didn't know. We just thought, oh, it's metric. The state said, oh, you take a course and they teach you how to use metric. Yeah, no. We had to learn a lot of it on our own.
And so you deal both in your own products that you manufacture, but you also deal in relationships with other brands in the market space. What are your compliance costs? Did you have a similar experience to Natasha?
I think the level of compliance for a cultivation facility is a little harder. I'm going to be honest and say, I would say that would be the hardest level of compliance you have to deal with. I'm a manufacturer. I think it's a little easier on our end. I don't need to have a huge staff. I think where compliance gets expensive isn't staffing. You need people to do these things. And the owner can't do everything. That's how you start out. You're jack of all trades. And a lot of people who came from the Prop 215 market, they weren't used to having a team of 8 people, and 2 of them were just compliance. They didn't even know what the word compliance meant in Prop 215.
Yeah, most of them had an attorney, and if there was anything that needed to be asked, right?
So a lot of the Prop 215 that migrated over, they're legacy and they're OGs of our industry, but they're not OGs when it comes to business and compliance and running your business like a pharmaceutical company. We're agricultural employers as per the state. Actually, you have to sign an attestation that you're an agricultural employer, but we're not treated as agricultural employers, right? We're taxed at the plant level. There is not another agricultural plant in California that's taxed at the plant level. Raisins, walnuts, almonds, tomatoes, name a
hops.
Thank you. Nothing. But us, cannabis, oh my God, it grows on trees. It is a tree. Let's tax it. So the compliance is expensive in people because you need people to manage compliance. What ends up happening is it's hard at first. You do it 5 times, it gets a little easier. You do it 50 times, you become an expert, you teach people. You just got to do it the right way to start. And a lot of times we don't know the right way because it's hard.
Hey, one of the things also I wanted to ask you about, because this is important, there's byproduct, and we mentioned this, there's a waste fee, right? So not only do you have to pay for your normal city relationship service of trash, right? But you said there's additional costs in that regards?
One of my biggest expenses as a manufacturer is my waste expense. I extract the essential oils from the cannabis plant like you would extract essential oils from any plant. Same process, actually. But because I'm cannabis, they consider my process nuclear active. So I have to basically treat it like hazardous waste and pay an exorbitant amount of money for a cannabis licensed waste hauler to remove the waste at my facility as if it's toxic, hazardous. Actually, I would bet that my cannabis, when it leaves my facility after I've extracted, is cleaner than it was on the farm where the dust, the dirt, the mites, the shit from the birds, the deers, everything, I clean it with ethanol. It's pure when it leaves my facility, but to them it's waste.
And that's it. And that's the truth. There's so much about our industry that I think is misunderstood by the regulatory authorities. And I got to go. So, Natasha, the threshold for testing is a big part of the regulated market now, right? And I think as a cultivator, you can maybe speak to that space. Has it changed the type of products that you use in nurturing your plants? Is there a cost associated with meeting the new thresholds of testing? And how do you feel about, that aspect in the climate right now?
I mean, for the most part, I don't think our growing methods have changed in the last 4 years. So our testing has been pretty similar with we R&D each batch. That costs, money, and then we do a compliance test on top of that. Because when I bulk my flower and sell it to like wholesale side of things, all of the distributors want to see at least an R&D test on it. And each batch, each strain, so every 15 days, twice a month, I'm spending a couple $100s on that testing on top of the compliance testing for my package stuff. So it gets pretty up there, but for the most part, our testing hasn't changed in the last 4 years. I think if anything, prices are kind of going down right now. So that's a great.
And that's not a bad thing.
Yeah, that's.
And Nate,
yeah.
you want to jump in?
Yeah. I mean, as far as testing, that's something I've been digging in deep lately on, and there's a lot of irregularities between testing labs and what you're seeing in terms of flower on the market. I've seen the same batch of flower tested at 2 different labs come out in much different THC percentages. So what does that tell you? That tells you that we need a uniform standard to be developed across the industry.
That's coming out.
Exactly.
And then, so you both are cultivators. You're a manufacturer. So are you the ones who take the product to the lab to be tested before, or is it a distributor?
I can take R&D samples
Yeah.
to the lab, and then the distributor will test the actual compliance
On
part.
behalf.
So we do all of the R&D, but now they're getting into soil testing too. So I'm
Really?
starting that, which is another
And
cost.
R&D testing, for everybody out there, if you're unfamiliar with the term as it's being used today, it's not a compliance. It's just for quality control, for being aware that you're going to be able to pass if there's any mitigation that needs to be done before you submit. Because after a compliance test has failed, does that have to be quarantined and then destroyed?
You have 30 days to decide.
You have 30 days to decide. Hab says not to his microphone.
Destroy it, or remediate it. The clock starts ticking after 30 days.
But that's when the compliance test actually happens. Right?
Only the compliance test triggers that if it fails. If it's an everybody does R&D tests. You're at your home could do an R&D test. You can grow a plant, take a bud off of it, and take it to a testing lab for an R&D test. Potency, pesticides, whatever you want. Most licensees do all kinds of tests. I do all kinds of R&D tests. It's the compliance test, which is the one that's sent to the state. R&D tests are never sent to the state. All they care about are compliance tests, and only a distributor can do a compliance test, a type 11 distributor.
Right.
And that triggers a whole slew of things, compliance with the state. It also triggers the taxes. When you get your compliance test, it triggers the cultivation tax to the state authorities. That's the actual trigger. So whatever distributor tested your product, that's a distributor that pays your cultivation tax.
All right, now, Nate, Natasha, you both maybe are aware that Hab is an expert when it comes to the topic of this egregious tax policy that's in need of much needed significant reform, right? So I'm going to ask you, Hab, if you wouldn't mind talking about the ugly cost of taxes from the state and municipal perspective as an operator in the city of Long Beach, to give people an understanding of how egregious this policy is in terms of its cost to the ability for products
Just
to
to
be
give
sold.
everybody simple math to give you an idea. Let's just talk. You're going to extract 30 pounds of trim that you got from a farm, and you're going to make it into a liter of distillate. That's that THC oil. Well, it takes 30 pounds of that trim to make that liter of oil. So the state says, well, each pound of trim is roughly $50 of tax. Now, just for the record, I pay probably $5 or $10 a pound for that trim. Now the state's charging $50 a pound for that same trim. So when I make that trim into oil, you take 30 pounds, multiply it by $50, that's $1,500 of tax inside that oil. I can't sell that oil for $1,500, let alone give the state $1,500 worth of tax. It's upside down. The market is completely upside down. Let's talk flour. Flour is 150, roughly, bucks a pound of tax. You can buy flour out there for $300 a pound.
And that's a fixed cost, right? It's a fixed
cost.
number.
So if the price of flour fluctuates, which it does, flour goes up and down in the markets, right? Harvest season goes down, dry season goes up. Come on, it's been like this for years. But the state of California thinks it's going to be a fixed price forever, it's always going to go up or something. So the taxes stay fixed, prices go down, state wins, we lose. It's going to take a lot of advocacy work and to combat that against the state. And it's going to take months and years, not minutes and days.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely, you can.
So this is really for both of you because, you know, cultivator, manufacturer are currently operating. I was sitting in on a discussion about the tax rate, especially related to cultivation, where, you know, certain counties, you know, they tax differently. Like you could find a flat rate canopy tax versus, you know, a flat percentage on what you actually harvest. You know, those are two different things, but I mean, how would you like to see the policy, the tax policy, be adjusted to create like a better supply chain and market in California?
How about eliminate cultivation tax? It shouldn't even exist.
Exactly.
Yeah, cultivation tax.
And not just at the state. We're doing a great job, thanks to the LBCA and a lot of the champions in this room, for getting the city of Long Beach to do an actual study to eliminate cultivation tax. Humboldt did it. It'll send a ripple effect to all those Southern California cities. It's a land grab for your money. We shouldn't be taxing the plant, because eventually the plant, that it compounds, by the time it gets to the retailer and the touch point of the consumer, it's been tripled in the price of what the actual wholesale product is. And all of that increase is just tax revenue. It's not, the manufacturer doesn't get it, the cultivator surely doesn't get it. The distributor, they're running on thin margins. And hey, what you said was earlier, Nate, was poignant. You're a regular business. You might be a social equity candidate, but you're a regular business. I'm sorry, you have the same troubles and tribulations that we're going to experience, you're going to experience. What does the social equity get you? Maybe some grant money if you meet your milestones. Maybe a loan if you're in Oakland that you got to pay back anyways. It's a tough business, social equity or not. It's going to take a lot of advocacy work for us to fix the industry, and it's not going to happen in a day. So it's going to take committed individuals over a long period of time, collaborating together, because individually we can't do it. Together we do it.
And, you know, to the point of what you're saying, Haben, I think morally and truthfully, you know, we won the war of drugs, in theory, in the cannabis world through the passage of Prop 215 and AUMA Prop 64. But yet, seemingly, we've also been punished, right, for, you know, as the subjugated, you know, if you want to be part of society, you're going to have to pay this heavy-handed price. And it's so onerous, and it's so above, and it's so non-related. You know, if you're going to use an adult use methodology, you know, alcohol is taxed at a far lower excise tax rate than the adult use cannabis position, right? If you get into medicinal, you know, the fact that we're even paying taxes on medicinal cannabis and an excise, it's egregious to me, you know what I mean? And then finally, you know, we are in our communities paying sales tax and doing all these things, but yeah, in agribusiness, there is nothing taxed at the point of harvest, right? It's always when it's processed and brought into market, and it's just ridiculous.
And all they would have to do is lower the excise tax to a point where the business or the industry would be sustainable. Because at that point, it just makes it easier for consumers to come into the legal market to get clean, tested cannabis. And it creates a public health crisis because the taxes are so onerous, people don't want to spend so much money for an eighth of weed, so they're going to go to the trap shop, and it's not clean weed. I'm sorry, it's not. I'm a manufacturer. I do a lot of R&D tests. A lot of the weed in California is not clean. Go to a licensed dispensary if you want clean weed. I'm just telling you right now. You want myclobutanol in your products? You want Eagle 20? It's not good for you.
and so, Nate, too, I mean, we're amen to that, by the way. A suppressed immune system was the real reason that, you know, in 1996, that we saw medical legalization here in the state of California, and a suppressed immune system should always be that baseline focus on why testing is important in our industry. But Nate, you know, when it comes to the social equity mindset, so that's something that, you know, I've been confused about. I've been trying to figure out, you know, the taxes being collected are supposed to go into social equity programming, right? You know, the end of the war on drugs, communities that were unduly impacted. Not everyone wants to be an entrepreneur, but then there's the social equity aspect of it that's trying to say, hey, you're going to be given this extra chance. And you haven't received any support other than, you know, access to a permit, right? I mean, what is the benefit of being a social equity applicant? Where's the support mechanism right now?
On paper, you know, it looks perfect. It looks perfect. You're supposed to have expedited licensing, reduced licensing fees, access to grant funding, all these beautiful things. Specifically in the city of Long Beach, access to store shelves, things like that. But it doesn't really play out that way. It just doesn't go down that way. And so you find yourself having to get creative and think outside the box and, you know, how you're really gonna grow and scale your business. And, you know, that's when the true businessman and hustler really comes out in you. So that, if you ain't a hustler, man, don't step in here. Don't do it.
And the truth is the illicit market exists, right? And so to bring it into the regulated mindset and all the benefits that we get there, right? Having a sustainable tax model for the long term, right? I think could actually result, more competitive regulated market could result in a higher overall tax input, right? And that's where I've struggled with this whole, you know.
It's like, would you rather have half of a grape or a quarter of a watermelon type of situation?
That's right.
You know, a reduced tax policy will definitely help suppress the illicit market, and, you know, actually help. Hopefully, you'll see some of those people on the illicit market actually, you know, get licensed and come into the legal market, and so we can all operate on the same level playing field. But yeah, until the state, until the cities, and hopefully praying to God one day the Fed really develops a comprehensive tax policy that makes sense for business operators, specifically in California, to grow, and once federal legalization actually opens up, to make us competitive in the national market. Because I mean, if you're thinking about nationally, we've seen guys from California go to Oklahoma and some of these other states and, you know, kill it. They don't have the same regulations that in hoops and red tape that you have to deal with.
Yeah, I'm watching it happen in New York right now, and it's very interesting to me. So in New York, one of the things they're doing with social equity is actually giving it some teeth. And my point is that we've collected all these tax dollars, but where's that reinvestment coming from? You know, in New York, they're using $200 million to actually buy real estate that can then be occupied by the initial retail social equity applicants. So everyone who opens retail in New York, the first 100 of them or so, I think, are slotted for people who have criminal history, you know, or relationship to. But they're actually using tax dollars towards it. But high taxation in and of itself is, you know, it's, you as a social equity applicant can't survive, just like Hab, just like Natasha, as businesses that came into this without, you know, it's a cost of doing business that's unsustainable, even for you. So you're given this great opportunity and expedited access to an ugly,
right.
truth.
I mean, you know, whenever the government gets involved, the city gets involved, things get a little mucky. I mean, there was new grant funding that came down the pipeline for social equity, but the first thing the city did was, you know, redirect those funds internally. And then I think a majority of the cannabis tax actually goes into the general fund, not into, you know, social equity for the city. So I would say, don't doubt social equity, don't doubt these operators. Put the money in their hands like it should be. No one needs someone else leading and guiding them.
And watch tax revenues grow.
Exactly.
Now, Natasha, for you, what would the elimination of the cultivation tax, would it make you guys more competitive on a statewide level? Would it allow you to actually increase production from the facility? Do you think your price point to improve?
It would definitely bring our price point down. I don't think people realize that we're paying a cultivation tax and the excise tax, but if I lose a harvest or I lose a room or I don't hit the right numbers, I still have to pay all that money. It's still the same. So,
is it by square foot?
Yeah, it's by square foot. So, and also our square foot of our facility is 9,000 square feet, but our canopy space is only 2,400 because of egress and all the other things that I had to go through with the city. We couldn't build it out using all of our hallways or our space. We had to have bathrooms and break rooms and this and that. And so we lost a lot of our square footage, and we only have 100 lights. So in that 100 lights, I have to make sure that we're hitting our numbers, getting enough weight, selling it at a right price point. And with the way cannabis prices went down in the last couple of months alone, it doesn't make any sense anymore. Like, it just, getting rid of cultivation tax altogether is a
So do you think it
win.
would be a big help?
Oh yeah.
And on the civic level, but also the state level?
Both levels, yeah.
Hab, you know, I don't know if you feel, you know, like we've covered this topic, because you do have a lot of worthy, but, you know, I'm going to sit here for a second and ask you in the audience, you've got a great panel up here. You have somebody who's going through the process. You have two people who've been through the process. But does anyone have a question that they'd like to throw out there, or maybe join in the dialogue? I know we have Adam here, who's from the retail perspective, and we have George from the retail perspective. Is there anybody, and we also have the labs here. Is there anyone who has a question? Don't be shy. Okay, good. Well, then, if that's the case, I mean, this is a topic I think that we can say is going to be an ongoing discussion, right? But what I'm going to do, and this is something I like to do at the end of every one of my podcasts, is I like to say to each panelist or guest, is there something that you thought of while we're in this discussion? Is there something you'd like to make sure that you get to communicate before you're done up here tonight? So I'm not going to be the definitive last word by any means on that. But I'll start with you, Nate, and then we'll work our way through Natasha to Hab. Is there anything that came to mind tonight, or anything you'd like the audience to hear from you tonight that you didn't get to talk about yet?
I mean, I'll keep it short and sweet. I mean, support craft, support small. You know, cannabis was, in my opinion, which was never meant to be overran by the corporate bros. You know, so make sure you are really identifying, you know, what retailers you're going to, what brands you're supporting, and definitely support social equity. Social equity needs each and every one of you to buy social equity, so we can prove social equity as a model in cannabis, but not only just cannabis, and across other industries actually works. So there we go.
Thank you. Natasha?
I think anyone that wants to get into the space or own a license, have a brand, regardless, you have to have your budgets in order. Things change every other day. Prices change, you know, packaging. We went through a pandemic, everything went higher. It was harder to get anything that we wanted. All of my breakdowns and models changed within a month of each other. And so if you want to be in the space, just have your numbers right. It's not just the taxes, it's all the costs that go into building out a facility, the delays, the rent, everything. So that's just my advice to anyone.
Thank you for sharing that. Hab?
Well, thank you. I do want to just mention a little tidbit that helps the social equity candidate, is that currently now you can't apply for a license in California and be issued a provisional license anymore. And that was actually a big thing. The only groups eligible for a provisional license now are the social equity candidates, which is great for the social equity world. What does that mean? Basically, it means if you apply for a license and you're not a social equity candidate, that you can only receive an annual license. There's no more provisional allotted for you. And an annual license, after you get everything done and you submit that application, could still take you 2+ years. And that's usually because of two things: your live scan, that they review your background check, your fingerprints and your records, and then CEQA review. And that's the biggest hurdle of all cannabis businesses. That's the California Environmental Quality Assurance Act. And that is enough of a hurdle that it could actually stop groups from getting licensed. The cool thing about Long Beach is the city actually made CEQA exempt. Our businesses are exempt. So if you're in the city of Long Beach, you're already exempt. You just have to go through some paperwork to verify that. So the hardest hurdle to actually getting licensing is CEQA, besides having enough money to do it. So it's time and money. A lot of time and a lot of money. And if you don't have passion for cannabis, don't do it. You have to have passion for it, and you have to have time, and you have to have a lot of money. And you have to have a really good team of people around you, because one person typically can't get it done. It takes a team, all right? Team of people to get it done, team of people you trust and that you rely on and have the same amount of passion that you do, because there's always one or two people working harder than the rest, and a team needs to work unified to make the ball move, okay? That's my message.
All right.
And check out Highmighty in your latest retail shops.
Now, if I can say, what did we learn tonight? We learned tonight that, as an industry, cannabis is subject to a lot of costs that are unanticipated or are unequaled by other industries. We started with real estate. We had a discussion. There's an ugly cost to real estate, the competitive nature of real estate, the zoning and what that creates in the limitation of market. We talked about taxation, right? We talked about the high cost of that, and how it ripples throughout the supply chain, right? That's a real ugly cost of doing business. Waste disposal, right? And things that are above and beyond. And then the high cost of banking, right, and actually having banking relationships and those services, the lack and limited access to primary credit, right? These are all things, and they're realistic, ugly costs. And I think that it's fair for us to say, no, we're not like everyone else. Yes, we do deserve the attention. And I want to go on record as saying, as a member of the LBCA, I think it's important that leadership would want us to do it. I know that Pam, Mr. Neal, Steve, and the team that's out there fighting the battles, is the city of Long Beach has actually come a long way and become a very progressive body that understand the economic stimulus and the economic benefit that legalization, regulation, and harmonization with the community has brought, but at the same time become the case study, then become the model, right, for what the statewide transition should look like, because it's got to happen, and we're going to need all your support. And so, on behalf of the LBCA team, the Cannabis Capitol team, I want to say thank you for all joining us here tonight. Stay involved, stay plugged in. Be ready to activate as we move towards the summer and the current election cycle. We're going to see a lot of legislation go on. And next month, we'll be holding this. It's the third Friday of every a month that we have the High LBC. And we'll have another topic. We'll have some more brands. But thank you, Nate. Thank you, Natasha. Thank you, Hab, for being here tonight. Thank you all for being in our audience. And we will see you next month for High LBC.